just a guy sitting there in front of your parking sign
Did you beat him up?
on his phone. I shouldn't shake your finger. He ignored me.
I've had that happen. People are like, I need to pull over real quick, and they just swoop into our spots, cause somebody was in mine one morning when I got here. And I was like,
If there are multiple other spots, if there were no other spots, I'd be totally patient with that. But multiple other spots,
Right.
I think, you can read the sign.
razor, yeah, like I was like, I'm so sorry, I just had to take this call. I'm like, that's okay, I just need to park there. Okay, we are ready in the back. Fantastic. Well, good morning, everyone. We will call this meeting of the Tillamook County Board of Commissioners for our financial work session to order at 10:33 a.m. And I'm going to go ahead and just hand this over to Rachel and Deborah. Thank you guys both so much.
All right, good morning.
Good morning.
On October 6th, the board convened with the Budget Committee an in-depth financial work session. And during that work session, we talked about a lot of things, but one of them was conducting regular financial reporting and quarterly work sessions. This is one of those quarterly work sessions. It's butted up pretty closely to the October one, but we wanted to stay on schedule following the receipt of the timber revenues. So today, a much shorter agenda than the last one. Deborah's going to provide an updated financial position summary, including the timber revenues that we just received. I'll present a draft board order that we've been talking about for the last several months with a tentative board consideration of December 3rd. And then we will dive into the financial plan framework. So we should take about an hour today, but that is our agenda. So let's start with Deborah.
Debbie, can you make me a presenter, please? Okay, this is a quarterly financial position report. This is in similar flow as we saw in the last October 6th meeting. Only we are looking at quarter one. So this is a new set of analysis looking at how we performed in this quarter one versus prior, and looking at that average or median performance over the last 10 years versus this current one. So the first page is a dashboard, a quick reference guide on what we're going to talk about as we go through. I'm going to dive into the details though and skip over the dashboard. Okay, so this report covers quarter one, which is July 1 through September 30th, 2025, and compares the actual performance to a typical quarter one based on the past decade. Because of the seasonal timing of revenues, quarter one generally operates at a net loss, ending with a lower cash balance than we started with. This section serves as a summary of the major category reports that follow. Each category provides a comparison of quarter one results to typical quarter one patterns, highlighting how revenues and expenditures align with seasonal trends. The timber category also includes an update through quarter two, offering a more current view of revenues. So quarter one, in summation, this is a summary of all the major categories together, saw a $2.0 million net loss or decrease in cash balance from the start of the fiscal year. A typical net loss in quarter one is 2.5 to 2.6 million, so we're above average for our ending cash balance compared to beginning. This indicates a stronger than usual first quarter performance. The main drivers behind that were our timber revenue coming in $811,000 above a typical quarter one. Our personnel services were $233,000 below a typical quarter one spending compared to the budgeted amount, reflecting vacancies and timing of cost increases. Materials and services included transfers out, were above typical quarter one by $292,000. Special side note on the personnel services, collective bargaining agreement adjustments are not yet visible in quarter one. As those adjustments are recorded in quarter two, they are expected to put a downward pressure on the quarter two results.
Deborah,
Yes.
may I ask you to just explain generally why we call it a net loss, the $2 million net loss, if in fact this is good news?
Yeah, so our ending cash balance is lower than what we started with, our beginning cash balance. So we operated we spent more than we received in this quarter, so a net loss operating overall.
Thank you.
Right.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
In your estimation, the excess in timber revenue,
Mhm.
the excess in timber revenue, how will that impact future timber revenues?
So that's the million-dollar question. As we get into the timber revenue, you're gonna see that our quarter two is typical, right on where we were last year, almost exactly. The question mark is gonna be in quarter four. We know that our quarter three is never great. It's typically when we see a lot of our expenses netted out of our revenue, but quarter four, what's that gonna look like is the question next. Okay, so final thing on this page is our general fund. It's a variance chart that it's just a visual of what I went over, our major drivers, ending fund balance, and what those look like in variance to a typical quarter one. We can see state timber revenue way up there, 811,000 above average, other revenue a little above average, personnel expenditures below average, materials and services above average, transfers out below, and ending fund balance 500,000 above average. Okay. Into the details, we are in property tax. Again, this is our most stable and predictable general fund revenue source. Last year in quarter one, we received $111,488. This fiscal year, we received $158,000. This is against or of the $9.6 million adopted budget amount. The change is $470,000 increase this fiscal year in quarter one. We average 1.6% of our budgeted revenue received in quarter one. I'm sorry, we received 1.6% of our budgeted revenue in quarter one. The average is 1.8%, and so that's 16,000 below an average receipt in quarter one. But that is nothing to be concerned about. It's mostly a small timing-related variance, as approximately 94% of our annual property tax revenue is collected in quarter two. So the chart on page 2 is just a visual comparison of our quarter one receipts for property tax. The fiscal year in '24 was an anomaly. We had a large refund issued in that year, which brought the net revenue down to zero. But otherwise, around 100,000, 150,000 over the past 10 years. Okay, on to timber revenue. So timber revenue has historically averaged around 23% of the general fund revenue, but with these big swings that we're seeing. Fiscal year in '25, quarter one, actual, we received 900,000. Fiscal year in '26, or this last quarter that we're speaking about, was 2.3 million. And that's of the 3.9 million adopted budget. That was 59% of our budgeted timber revenue for the year in quarter one, an increase of 1.38 million from the prior year. So expected or average received in quarter one is about 38%, so we're well above that, and 1.49 million above that. The percentage variance with timber is hard to, so with the larger swings, the variance in quarter one is higher than we'd see in other revenue types. And with our lower budgeted timber, that percentage is a little misleading. It was a great quarter one. However, what that means fiscally on an annual basis is unclear. Quarter two, again, as Ken asked, quarter two timber distribution was received on October 31st. The general fund share is about 620,000, which is nearly identical to last year's quarter two. So if we combine quarter one and quarter two, year-to-date timber revenue is about 2.9 million, or 75% of the 3.9 million annual budget.
Good news.
Yes. So here's the chart for the timber revenue. Again, we see those wild swings and why it's so hard to pinpoint that mid-range for quarter one. On to other timber revenue, or I'm sorry, other revenue. So this is a big mixed category. It includes charges for services, fines and forfeitures, inter-county charges. Did I note that? Yeah. interest, intergovernmental revenue, licenses and permits, miscellaneous items, transfers to the general fund. So key data in fiscal year end 25 or last year, we had 1.9 million revenue in this category. This year we have 2.48 million of the 10.5 million adopted. This is a $580,000 increase from last year and about 23.6% of our budgeted amount. We expected around 20.8% of our budgeted based on prior year performances, which is about 2.19 million. So we're above roughly 292,000 average receipts in quarter one. The primary drivers on this, we've heard a lot about these, are our park support to general fund transfer in and transfer from the revenue stabilization fund. Historically, we had not done that in quarter one, so that is new, and we're seeing that in the variance on this. We're now into the expense category, personnel services. This includes salary, taxes, and benefits. This typically represents about 71% of our actual general fund expenditures, sorry. Last year in quarter one, personnel services accounted for 4.28 million. This fiscal year is 4.34 million. The change is about a $64,000 increase, or 22.3% of our current budgeted amount in quarter one, and expected quarterly amount is 23.5%, which would have been 4.58 million. So this means we underspent the expected amount of personnel services by 233,000. This is due to our ongoing vacancy rate of around 10%, as well as our timing of collective bargaining agreement adjustments, which are not yet reflected in quarter one. So if we look at the chart, we can see that we clearly flatlined between last year and this fiscal year, quarter ones. For materials and services, again, large combined category that includes not only all of our materials and services, repairs and maintenance, contracted services, etc., as well as transfers out. So last fiscal year, we had spent 2.77 million in this category. This fiscal year it's at 2.54 million, which is a decrease of 200,000.
We wish it was 200.
Wish it was 200
right?
million.
We'd be feeling flush.
So this year we spent 34.8% of our budgeted amount in quarter one. Expected is around 35%, so we're pretty much right on target there. When materials and services are combined with transfers out, fiscal year 26 quarter one spending is about 2.5 million, or 34.8% of the combined annual budget, very close to the long run quarter one share of 35%. Within this combined category, materials and services alone are above their typical quarter one usage, while transfers out are lower than their historical quarter one pattern. We've had a few one-time transfers out in quarter one in previous years. We'll remember opioid transfers out, some other minor revenues that we had to transfer out. We're usually done in quarter one. So that's why we see just this little bit of decrease in this fiscal year.
Because those were one-time adjustments. I think there was one for housing dollars as well. Okay.
Okay, capital outlay. Just gonna go straight to the top on this. So this includes general fund and building improvement fund, as well as vehicle reserve fund. In last fiscal year, we had spent $74,000 in quarter one. In fiscal year in 26, we had spent $53,000. Building improvement, $62,000 against a $1.8 million adopted budget, and vehicle reserve is spent $0. This is 15.6% spent in quarter one against our budget, and expected it was 100%. This is because we've typically front-loaded our capital projects, a lot of them hitting 100% in quarter one. For example, our vehicle purchases. So the high variance of timing of capital project expenditures and low quarter one spend should not be interpreted as a reduction in planned capital investment, it's just timing issue. Contingency, I'm gonna go really quickly through this one, nothing to report. And that's good news.
Nothing to report there.
Yeah, we didn't have to move anything in contingency and we haven't historically. Revenue stabilization. This is our reserve maintained to help address deficits and economic downturn, smooth volatility in timber and other cyclical revenues, and support the general fund during periods of stress. The fund is managed through the county's annual budget process and is supported by county financial policies. Quarter one activity, transfers to the general fund, monthly transfers throughout the quarter total $250,000 from the revenue stabilization to the general fund. The balance after quarter one left in the revenue stabilization is about $2 million. Budgeted fiscal year 26 transfers of about 1.2 million would bring the year-end balance to about 1.14 million if fully executed. So following the planned transfers out to the general fund for operations, the revenue stabilization will be at a 17-year low fund balance. Policy around timber revenue, surplus, and deficits use and automatic triggers for use and replenishment are recommended. And fund balance. This is a cumulative general fund position carried forward into each fiscal year or quarter. It reflects both planned cash flow needs for the coming year and net effect of prior year revenues and expenditures. Again, as we went over in the summary, the key influences were increased timber revenue receipts in quarter one, our lower than expected personnel spending, and our revenue stabilization and parks transfers in as our other revenue increases. So if we compared ourselves to prior fiscal year quarter one ending balances, we can see that we're higher than we have been since fiscal year in 22 at the end of quarter one. So all that to go to the quarterly forecast. Quarterly forecast illustrates the cash flow cycle in the general fund. Dates on the horizontal axis, let me get to the chart here. Dates on the horizontal axis represent the first day of each quarter. Seasonality and cash cycle, we see our stair step that we see every year in our projection. This is our cash cycle. Property tax are concentrated in quarter two or quarters that start with October 1. And then the county spends down cash through quarter three, quarter four, and into quarter one every year. Temporary dips below the recommended ending fund balance level in quarter one are expected and planned for by managing strong quarter four ending fund balances each year. So again, I have color coded the dots green, yellow, and red for quarter four because that's what we have to plan for that major dip in quarter one and what we budget off of. The performance last quarter compared to projected, we are in quarter one 1.1 million above projected, and that's mainly due to timber revenue, personnel expenditures. So I anticipate as we see the quarter two adjustments to personnel services, that's going to push our projections downwards a little bit from this one. But with the current one, we see that through fiscal year end 27, where our ending cash balance is in the green currently. As we move out to 28, it wouldn't let me choose the dot to color code it, but that should be red. And then as we go out, we see that it's decreasing. So-
It's also missing the yellows. This graph doesn't have any yellows.
So what's interesting is between fiscal year end 27 and 28, we go from about $1 million above our red or at-risk territory to straight into our below recommended ending fund balance. So we kind of skip right through that at-risk zone throughout that year.
We think the first dot is yellow.
That first dot is our actual performance in the last quarter. So with that, it is still anticipated that we have the 2 to 3 million funding gap year over year as we move forward. That's an average throughout those years. I think as we level out in Q2 with our personnel adjustments and our, see what timber does throughout this fiscal year, we're in that same category. And that is all I have for our quarterly update. Any
Thank you.
questions?
Thank you, Deborah. Questions,
Deborah.
anyone?
Just so I'm sure I know where the red is, it's the 4/128 that should be red
Yes,
and not the 7/127?
correct.
Thank you. I think this is very helpful. It's reassuring, and I'm grateful for the work and for the regular update, because the way we did it previously, I think we were all just trying to imagine what was happening quarterly with the timber receipts. So this is very helpful. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I love this. Glad you're doing it. It's very helpful. It helps us to plan and not be panicked and surprised.
Thank you.
I would agree. The only thing, I really can't read that chart.
I know.
That-
You don't have
so-
glasses on.
No, even with my glasses on, I was like, I still can't read that chart. So maybe I just need stronger glasses. I don't know if there's any way. That would be my only comment about this packet,
Yeah.
is that by putting it on that, I know you want it on that page with all of its notes at the bottom, but it's really hard to.
You landscape it and do it.
Right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so my only
second
feedback.
page.
Otherwise, I
Yeah.
love this. I love how you give all the information and the explanation that lets us know this really is good, or this looks good, but here are the factors that are gonna change that, or here's the factors that are gonna change it for the better potentially. But just really giving us that deeper dive and analysis, so that that you who are deep in it and really understand it are helping us to understand it, because it is complex. And to know, you can easily look at this in one quarter and think, oh, we're doing great. Look at that, that change in fund balance. We're just driving right up there. We're going to come out on top. And to understand there's some timing factors in there. There are some other, revenue stabilization, et cetera, factors in there. Just on all of them, whether they were good this quarter or not good this quarter, having the analysis that goes with it to tie it to the full annual cycle and multi-year cycle, very helpful.
Thank you.
And anything for Deborah?
No, I agree with everything everyone said. I really appreciate all the work.
Okay, thank you for that, Deborah.
Okay, moving on to the draft board order. This order is titled, "In the Matter of Adopting Fiscal Year 2025-2026 Financial Strategies and Guidance." It comprises several things that we've been talking about for the last several months, so there shouldn't be any surprises here. And as a practical matter, we're already doing a bunch of them. But I think it's important to memorialize the board's guidance in this board order, and the executive team has reviewed this as well. So the goal would be to, just stepping back for a second, would be to have the board consider an order like this going into each budget season. So departments, in preparing their budgets, have a sense of what the board's interest for that upcoming fiscal year is, and we'll work on that going forward. I don't know if you would like me to read this, or if you've had time to go over it. What's the pleasure of the board on how you would like to go through this?
I confess I did not go over it previously, and maybe you could read to us, if not the whole thing, the things that you want to highlight.
Okay, I'll just read the adopted part. I won't read the intro. For fiscal year 2025-2026, the Board of Commissioners adopts and affirms the following financial strategies and guidance. It was important to me to have some flexibility in here, so it doesn't read as a shall or a mandate. It's a guiding document. Similarly, some of these border on policies, but you're familiar with the new policy structure that we have, and these are kind of one-offs, and didn't want to go into a whole policy document, although we will be going there later with some things that Deborah's working on. County leaders are expected to take a comprehensive and proactive approach to ensure the overall health of the county budget and operations. The goal with that being getting out of our individual departments, while we need to be thinking of that as well, but also thinking of our decisions for the broader county. The county will maintain a fiscally conservative approach in all financial and operational practices to the greatest extent possible. The county will pursue and implement technological advancements that improve efficiency and effectiveness in service delivery. In circumstances requiring expenditure reductions, the county will give due consideration to all options, with personnel retention being a priority. And yes, I know I need a space after D. Vacant positions will be evaluated and refilled in a strategic and timely manner consistent with organizational priorities and fiscal capacity, and in accordance with the county's recruitment process framework if developed. So the recruitment process framework, if you recall, we talked about at the October 6th work session about how we're going to fill vacancies, and that's a big body of work that we want to get right. So it's moving through the process, but assuming we want to still proceed with that, but we may get to a point where it's developed and it may not be something that the board wants to adopt. So it's in here as a goal. The Director of Financial Services and Chief Administrative Officer will maintain regular communication with the Budget Committee, leadership team, employees, and union representatives regarding county financial matters. Monthly financial reports will be presented and quarterly work sessions will be convened. Lastly, a transfer of $1 million shall be made from the Parks Department, Fund 132, to the General Fund, Fund 010, to support countywide operational needs. Simultaneously, $1 million in transient lodging tax revenues, Fund 121, shall be transferred to the Parks Department, Fund 132, to support its budgeted operations. And then this order remains in effect until June 30, 2026, at which time it shall automatically expire unless renewed or extended by subsequent action of the Board of Commissioners. So again, the goal is to have a new one, but if all of this is exactly the same, we don't need to do a new one, and it would just roll over. And we do have some time for revisions in preparation for the agenda next week. But if you had any initial thoughts on how this reads, or anything that may be missing or you'd like to add, be a good time to discuss.
Go ahead.
I think this is great, and you're right. We have already discussed all these things, so I'm glad to get them down in a board order. The thing that I'm wondering about that I don't see or didn't hear is we talked about requiring that departments not go over their budget without board approval, and I didn't see that specifically in here.
That is something we're going to work on with the policies that Deborah's working on, and it's early in the fiscal year, and so we don't have enough information on how big of an issue that actually is, so we were a little hesitant to put it into policy right now.
Okay.
But we can add it if you'd like.
Okay.
The only thing would suggest for maybe
Else on that? No. Okay.
maybe a suggest for a revision would be at the end of G. Is just when it says to support its budget operations, maybe adding some kind of language saying related to tourism facilities, or some way of addressing that we recognize the parks as a visitor supportive thing. So I just feel like that might be good as we're going into just to recognize that it's used for that.
That's a good idea. Yeah, just basic language like the Parks Department as a tourism facility.
Just some language that satisfies the statute, but because that's something that we could up if we needed to. We could increase that number because they spend more than that. So.
I do like Commissioner Bell's idea of putting some piece of the framework in there on budget overages, and the fact that those will have to be, that's not an allowed, because it's a difference. It's a change in how we've done it before. And I realize that we're still early, and hopefully we'll get all that worked out before we get to places where people start to go over certain budgeted line items, et cetera. But it has been part of the conversation, I think, in the interest of sort of setting the framework of, because you say something about the fiscally conservative approach, and I think that's one of the steps that we're taking to say that's, one of the new things we look at that we in the past have just allowed movement without consideration.
Yeah, good point, because it was nice when we had the resources for, a department knew that they might go over, and we had the resources to cover it at the end of the year. That was nice, and now we don't. And to Sarah's question in our last budget workshop, she said, how can we help? That's a way. That's a way that departments can help, is tracking that up front rather than after the fact.
I agree. I'd like to put something, you can make it like you did with the county will pursue to implement, like you can make it that we're working on it, but it's definitely one of our goals.
Right.
is to implement.
Yeah, I like it. None of it is, it's all stuff that we've talked about, just memorialized in writing. None of it's comes as a surprise. I wondered why the order would not automatically renew, with the exception of the transfer to the Parks Department.
Because there may be other things. I think we're in a lot of, time of a lot of change, and especially with our policies and things, around budget and budget process, and so there may be a desire to add or take away what's in here.
Okay.
Or maybe even make it less planning, more like this is it.
Yeah, this could be a mandated document, yeah.
Sheriff has his hand up.
Sheriff Brown, please.
I have a clarifying question if I could. You're talking about if an individual department goes over budget, we'd have to come to you guys first. Is that overall budget, or are you talking individual line items? Because Commissioner Scar, I heard you mention line items. But for example, if we have an unforeseen case come up and we're going to go over on an overtime, do we got to wait to go over on that for each individual line item, or is this just overall budget?
Good question.
I can completely concur with overall budget, but boy, if we had to come in for each individual line item, that's a lot on your guys' plate and a lot on ours.
I'm going to let Deborah address that. I think that's part of why that isn't in here yet, is that there's much to be determined. But I'm going to let Deborah answer that because she looks like she's ready.
That's a great question.
Understood.
Yeah, that came up with, in regards to use of contingency, so that would be overall budget overage. We couldn't move it around in a line item, it had to be pulled from contingency. So I'm assuming that's the path we're taking on that.
Which is that 10% between personnel. And so there is some movement and some where you cannot move it, correct?
Right,
Yeah.
correct.
I think,
Okay.
and at this point, it's please be thoughtful, department directors, that we're trying to find the right path forward on this, but looking for a space where we don't have the just sort of unmonitored movements of the past.
Josh, did that answer your question? It's overall.
That answered it perfectly, and for what it's worth, I agree with that. We have individual line items that do go over. We try to be very cautious of that, because we're usually short, and other ones, and I think the sheriff's office comes in below its budget every year by hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I think that's a great idea. It would have been a lot of work if it was individual line items, hence my question. So
Thank you.
Okay, other questions on the order?
Mhm.
And lastly, the goal is to get some final direction from the board today, but understand that there may be more conversation that's warranted on this if you're not comfortable giving that final direction on the priorities, so we can have a subsequent, I think, a board briefing, we could have a follow-up conversation. So no pressure today, but it is a goal. So what you have in the spreadsheet is what we're calling a financial plan framework. So this is the vision of how things are starting to shape and come together, what the financial plan would look like. It has a list of the strategies that we talked about during the October 6th work session, that the board, that the group expressed support for exploring or implementing. Wanted to note two things. There was some misinformation in the Headlight Herald that we've since corrected in the online version, where it was reported that the Tiberius report, which this part was accurate, one of the top 5 recommendations for cost reduction strategy is deferring facilities maintenance. And then later in the report that staff gave, we provided our recommendations, one of which was not to do that. And the article actually said that that was recommended. So just to be clear, we are not recommending deferring facilities maintenance costs, and the group was supportive of that at that time. And then I wanted to note 2 changes to the projects listed here and how it was presented in October. Property management and code enforcement was both in the revenue section and expense section, and in here it's just one line item because of the way the spreadsheet is structured. Each strategy has a revenue and expense line item, but it's the same strategy. And then the concept to have a TLT transfer to the fair, and then a transfer of that same amount from the fair to the general fund, similar to what we're doing to parks. It was a concept that we were going to explore, and in looking at the statutes, don't think that that's a viable option based on how the statutes prescribe fair revenues be spent. So that option is not in here, but generally everything else is. And so how this is organized is by high priority, and then by lead, and then staff hours in a high, medium, and low category as well. So what we're looking for from the group today is, do you agree with the high, medium, and lows? And if not, how do you want for priorities? If not, how do you want those adjusted? Because out of this meeting or the subsequent meeting, when you give us your final direction, we will start working on those in earnest. Some of these we know we're already working on, but some we are not. And so want to get your direction on that. And then, we've been talking about these strategies for a while, and I feel like it's just a shell game every time I bring them to you. But at this point, it's time to really dig in and start working on these and stop talking about them. The initial high, medium, and low priority is me looking at these and really just thinking about the need for the county, the benefit for the county, staff's capacity, and the urgency. This is fluid. If you want to change any of these, please do so. I hadn't planned on going through each of these one by one. I think you're pretty familiar with all of these now. None of these should be a surprise, so we can dive into the rationale or how you want to shift them, or maybe what the thinking is on how we arrived at the priority. Jumping ahead, so at the bottom of the spreadsheet, there's a list of next steps. So we see the board giving direction on the priorities. Deborah and I working on strategizing the timing. So really diving into how long some of these are going to take, and the action plan for each one, and furthering the exploration of its feasibility for the county to bring back another recommendation to you, or an implementation timeline if it is something that you have established that we absolutely want to do. Then we would develop the scenarios for what this looks like. So if we have a public service charge fee, for example, we would look at all the specificity of what that actually looks like, timelines for implementation with better revenues, and build those into financial scenarios that you can then react to, with the goal being all of these are further developed in a timeline and cost and built into different scenarios that you all can pick and choose. We want to do those. And that suite of those makes their way into the financial plan. And by the time we get through all of that, it should align with when the financial assessment is done, and we're working on a financial plan this spring. So that's the vision, where we're going big picture. Today is to get your affirmation on what the priorities are. Questions on what's before you or where we're going. And then I would recommend maybe starting with questions about the why and then deliberating on priorities, but however you'd like to proceed.
Please ask questions.
So as I'm evolving as a commissioner and learning more about my job, my creative brain starts thinking about things. One of the things I'm going to ask is, one, with conversations with Cassandra, who happens to be here, also from some things I learned at AOC, was that almost all counties in Oregon are really missing out on low-hanging fruit by not being up to date on their appraisals. And part of that has to do with, of course, the expense of it and the shortage of people. One of the things I'm asking is, I think this is just like I get excited about TLT. One of the things is with Cassandra's, and actually this is statewide, they're doing some pilot programs with new software, AI software, and better aerial photography. And what that does is it brings in a lot more revenue. It potentially could bring in millions of dollars in revenue for things. I don't know, she might be able to speak to how far behind we are, or how many, appraisals we need One of the things I think is a cheap way, a cheap investment, a really good ROI is to prioritize that. I'm thinking that comes under probably policies and process with computer automation, or if there's another pullout, if there's a way to parse that out and put it as a separate priority is updating our appraisal capacity, which based on some of the things I heard this last week and also speaking with Cassandra was, it really could be a big difference for the revenue. I think, was it Lane County's paying it's like $200,000 a year, which is like 1.5 FTE, but I don't know if that would be the same price for us because we're a much smaller county. So I think exploring that should be a high priority. And then maybe it is, so maybe you can point that out.
So I would initially put that under computer automation. Last week I spoke with Cassandra about this as well. I'm fully in support of that. I think it's a great concept. If there is a computer automation piece that we know about that we want to do, we can put it in here as a high priority, and then I would assign Cassandra a lead.
I think that would be great. I think there are she has some ideas that C389 or and then Earthview or another one. There's definitely, and there were vendors at AOC. Actually, I spoke to them as well. I think even just assigning them for Cassandra to come back to us with some numbers and some ideas on that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, that is exciting. I was thinking about AI and aerial photography and even LiDAR photography for the stuff that you can't see through the trees, that if we had the pictures on file, we had AI compare them to the new pictures, we would see all kinds of things that have been built and not assessed, and some of them perhaps not even permitted.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which
no,
is other revenue for getting permits retroactively, if possible.
I agree. Cassandra and I talked about this 2 years ago before she became assessor, and she was like, there's this new technology emerging. So I think hopefully it's coming far enough now that it feels like this is something we can look at. And I really appreciate it. I appreciate you bringing it forward. I appreciate Cassandra being with us. I think any other directors out there listening, this is one of those key pieces, right? Is that we know that we have to learn how to do things in the 21st century here. We're behind. We've been behind for a long time in a variety of our departments. And the more we can move forward with our efficiencies and learning about technology's uses, the better we can serve our public, and in many cases for less resources. I appreciate, we've talked about this, you and I've talked about it, Paul, as well, the text thing that's on our webpage now that's giving answers out of Christie's department. And I don't know, others may have added since she presented to us, but just being able to look at that and say the amount of time that our staff spend answering a telephone, not that you'll ever get away from having somebody needing to answer the telephone, but the amount of time that is spent when really if someone could just ask that chatbot the AI question and grab that most commonly sought after piece of information, we could take at the very least some of the pressure off of our staff who feel like they're doing too much with too little all the time. And in the best case scenario, at some point, reduce the amount of hours needed to have people answering telephones. But that's a continuum and an evolution that won't happen overnight, but we got to start. So I love technology as a something to explore.
And to bring that up, also legislation would be a big one too. And I know that Deborah's probably well aware of this, but like with the survey, the recent legislation regarding surveying fees, recording fees that they can add.
Yeah.
Which,
cornerstone.
so you're aware of that, and that potentially, those fees haven't been changed since 1984.
I think he's coming before us in January, I think. I know I asked Rachel this a month or so ago.
Asking when you were saying,
Yeah.
talking to our directors,
Yes,
one of the other
please.
things is letting us, highlighting for sure, Cassandra did last year for me with some of the A&T stuff, is letting us know, because we may not know, you probably will, because you'll be hand on the pulse at AOC, but that's another way for department heads to help us with the revenue by finding those solutions too.
100%, because commissioners I always say my knowledge is a mile wide and an inch deep. So I know a little bit about everything that happens at the county, but there's a lot I don't know, and that's where our department heads are our experts. You all know, really what's happening in the world of your area of expertise. Help us help you help the county,
Yep, perfect.
I'm wondering if we could use that same software, that same AI, whatever it is, to maybe make progress in the vacant housing fee that makes it really easy.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, maybe that's it. That's another message to send out to the department is as we have this AI policy coming in, again, we won't necessarily know how it'll benefit you in efficiency. Also, by doing that, it helps us with perhaps bringing in more revenue too, to your point, Ken.
And the text my gov, I don't know whether or not this is going to save us money, but we intend to use it for emergency management, which will be a vast improvement for the services people receive when they have questions, because
Sure.
our emergency manager is one person in an emergency-rich county. So it's going to be really, really useful.
And those phone calls from parks, if they can start using it too, because I know they get a lot of parks
True,
regulation here
totally.
in the clerk's office.
Yeah,
Cool.
great.
So I think, Rachel, to your question today, which is, are we ready to sort of deliberate and provide priority? I think I need a little more time to digest and think about these before I feel like I'm ready to say, yes, you guys got it all perfect. I don't know how my fellow commissioners are feeling. I feel like there might be a circle back point.
Yeah, good
I
idea.
think this is amazing. You're so consistent.
is.
Like you
no,
said,
this is-
I know you feel like it's shell game because like we say this and we do this and we do this, but this is really helpful.
We're hard to follow. We change our minds a lot,
Especially as we learn more. Like I said, I'm
right?
just in the last 2 months, my focus has changed a little bit.
100%.
So one of my questions in the high category is about fees. Does that also include the fees that some departments, the fee rate case study we've been talking about, some departments charge fees for things. Is that also in that category?
Yes, that is a big category. The vision being, so we have a catalog of, we have a good catalog of all of the county's fees, how they're adopted, whether it's ordinance, order, state, et cetera. And we need to make sure that's updated and then start working through how we want to update it. Or update it going forward. And part of this discussion is going to be a philosophy of what fees should we be charging where? Because maybe some places we shouldn't be charging a fee because we collect property taxes and people expect us to use property taxes to pay for it, for example. Or what departments do we establish the philosophy that we know the fee won't fully cover staff costs? So there's a high-level philosophy discussion that needs to be captured, which will likely vary by department, but that's yet to be determined. So it's a high-level discussion as well as when we're talking about individual increases, the rate case. But I see that's a little bit further down the road.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm hearing we will schedule a subsequent meeting. Do you have a timeline that you want to tentatively schedule or get on the books? Or do you just want to wait and reach out to me when you're ready to discuss? How would you like to schedule the next
I would
meeting?
like to get it on the books because I think we want to have an impetus for our work going forward. So I think we all have this in front of us now, and if we can give ourselves certainly at least a week or two, so that if we want to have, gather some more information or have an individual conversation with someone in our liaison world or with Deborah or yourself to kind of do that back work so that when we come together, we're ready to kind of make decisions. Because that would be my ask of all of us that are going to be in this conversation is let's set a timeline that makes it so when we do come back together, we're ready. We've had all the time we need. So, commissioners, does that feel like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months? What does
Oh,
that
no,
feel
I'd like to get it done sooner than later.
A board briefing in December.
Okay.
I don't think the 3rd is too soon.
Does that give you enough time?
So we're sitting here today on
Thanksgiving this week too.
22nd. We have Thanksgiving in there.
I think we have some other topics on the 3rd. I'm guessing we need at least an hour or so to
I would,
get through.
yeah, I would say, so maybe the 10th, is that a better time-wise one for board briefing?
Yes.
Okay.
And commissioners, that's time enough in case you
Does that
wanna-
work for you?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I do feel like a chit chat with liaisons and things may be helpful because obviously, I wouldn't have any clue about what Cassandra was, able to bring forward, and I'd like to have that opportunity with mine as well to say, is there something from their department that should get engaged in this?
Great. Good work.
Yeah, this is awesome. Very, very cool.
Okay, so lastly, just sharing the upcoming meetings. So per our monthly report out, Deborah will provide the update on the financial position during Monday's leadership team meeting, and for the public during next Wednesday's board meeting, it'll be the exact same materials, so there won't be any updates. And then tentatively, the next quarterly board work session after the receipt of the next timber revenues is February 16th at 2.
Great.
And then now adding tentatively a December 10th board briefing to review the framework. Okay,
Thank you.
all we have
Thank
for
you
you today.
both. Thank
Anything
you
else?
both
Ken,
for your
thank
excellent work.
you for coming, Ken.
I can, and I
Yeah.
know
Is
that we
MJ online?
we have MJ and Michael Weisen flew both online, so I would just say MJ or Michael, were there any comments that you would like to add as budget committee members? Actually, we may have lost MJ. Oh, no, there she is.
I think she's-
She's there. So opportunity for either MJ or Michael to comment if you wish.
No, I think it's all good information. I'm interested to see what the commissioner's thoughts are on the allocation and prioritization of the big list. So I wait with bated breath.
Perfect. Well, we would love to have your input as we do that, Michael. Please feel free to reach out to any of us and share your thoughts.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. MJ, any comments that you'd like to share today? Is that a comment I can't read?
That's not MJ, it's Chris
Okay.
from earlier.
Okay, so no additional comments.
He's asking when ONC timber money comes in.
Wouldn't we like to know?
Is MJ's mic not working? I think I just saw that.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. I'm sorry we can't hear you.
Yes, thank you, MJ. And Chris, I didn't mean to be just flippant about the ONC money, but there's a ton of work being done at the federal level right now to try to return the timber monies from federal harvest to counties, because in the legislation, it has been redirected directly to federal treasury, away from the many centuries long, in fact, agreements with the state. So more to come. There's a lot of work being done on the SRS right now to try to get SRS reauthorized while they work to also get revenues back to the county. So we wish we knew. So there's a little deeper answer on that one.
My question was, if we had budgeted for that timber money to come in fourth quarter, would we be looking already at trying to offset a loss that could be forthcoming?
I'm not, Deborah can help me out with that one.
So ONC money typically goes to roads, schools, minor amount to Title III and general fund. So no, it is not budgeted in quarter 4.
Okay, so I had some misunderstanding. I thought the SRS from the Forest Service went to the county, but the ONC SRS money went to general fund, which primarily generally goes to support the sheriff's office. So I had misunderstood.
Right, yeah. So now with the SRS expired last year, we had the first time that SRS was not required to go to road and schools. And we did see that in the general fund. We also have a minor 50,000-ish payment in fourth quarter that we receive. That amount is in the budget, I believe, but again, $50,000.
That was rude.
Jumped
That was
off
rude,
screen.
Chris.
He's
Okay.
being efficient.
Yes. Efficient with his time. Okay, anything else for the good of the order before we close this workshop today? Okay, not hearing any, we will adjourn this work session at 11:26 a.m. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Great work.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
good stuff.
Terrific.
Fantastic.
I love these reports.
And I talked about this meeting on the radio today, and I talked about the meetings to come on the radio today.
Nice.
And in regard to